Hello and welcome. I'm Kyle Densler, your host for this February edition of Anderson Speaks. We have a return guest here. It's been a while since we got to chat, but I want to welcome back to the show Liz Baxter. Liz, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thanks for asking. You are an independent college counselor, and you have your own LLC called College Connection.
I do.
Well, give us the history behind that and what pulled you into this field, and how long have you been involved?
Well, I've been with College Connection about 5 years now, and I came out of college not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, but I worked at my university's admission office, liked it, so I ended up with my master's in education, started working at Miami University as an admission officer, and I really loved working with students so much that I wanted to switch to kind of this side of things and work directly with them. So from the beginning to the end of the admission process, I help students find their options, assess their academic profile, get the scholarships and financial aid they need, and get them into the right college fit.
Was it ever a thing of, I'm going to pursue teaching, and you went this direction? Because a lot of people who have a master's in education, people assume that they are in a classroom. You are teaching and helping, but was that ever a focus, or has it always been, this is the route I want to take?
I really have always wanted to do the counseling aspect of it. I did take a couple of courses, about teaching, and I really admire teachers, but I knew that was not the place for me. So I knew working with students directly, I had such an interesting college search myself, and I just felt this is something I can really help students understand, because the complications and just the vast amount of information out there is so much that they just need someone to hold their hand and lead them through the process, and I've always wanted to do that.
Absolutely. I know from my own experience, I will be a lot better prepared for my kids when they reach that age than my parents were. Other than a cousin, I was one of the first graduates from with a four-year college degree in our family. There's a lot looking back that, had we known, things could have been easier. So I'm sure that's a role that you get to play for some folks.
I do, and I even worked with families now who I'm now with their second child, and so much has even changed in the 2, maybe 3 years, from one child to the next. And for me, I'm doing the professional development, going to conferences and learning, and the world is ever changing in admission. So it helps anyone who, even if you've just gone through the process, there's been enough changes that it helps to have someone who keeps up with it, to really help you understand what are the nuances, what you should be looking for.
Absolutely. So what are the various post-secondary education options out there?
Well, and I think a lot of people have this idea of college as a very broad, picture of wherever you go to, school after high school. And there are so many options out there. So, you think traditionally a 4-year degree, a bachelor's degree is, the pretty much the most popular option for students to pursue. But there are also 2-year degree options going through a community college. There are different vocational programs where you can get certificates. And then you have to think ahead down the road, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, you're looking at both a bachelor's degree, a 4-year degree, plus then a professional degree above that. So you've got, potentially up to 8 years of education, ahead of you. And a lot of people kind of just lump it all under the name college. But when you really look at it, there are several different levels of that within it. So I like to think of it as just a post-secondary education option, not so much college, because you want to really get specific about what area you really should be looking for and going into.
Awesome. You mentioned that there are a lot of certifications and 2-year degrees. Can you give some example of those? Because like you said, post-secondary is not just going to school for 4 years and graduating with a specific BS or BA. It's there are other things out there. Can you give some examples?
Sure. A lot of the more technical professions, there are a lot of engineering 2-year degrees. There are nursing 2-year degrees, or medical assistant. A lot of areas in the medical field, the veterinary field. A lot of the people who you see, if you go into a doctor's appointment or you go into a hospital, most of the people working in there, they have 2-year degrees that they're specialized in these different areas. If you want to go into a lot of different computer areas, there are 2-year degrees for that. So things that really require very specific skills that you can train for, that ends up being a 2-year degree a lot of times.
Do you feel like, from maybe a resume or qualification standpoint, that a full-fledged 4-year degree is necessary nowadays, or do these trainings and certifications hold up when it comes to speaking with potential employers?
I think the two-year degrees do very well for their very specific fields. So it really comes down to the student deciding what their career goal is. And if their career goal, requires a two-year degree, that's going to get them where they need to go. Other students who are maybe not so sure what they want to do, or who feel that they want to gain the experience or the skills of a four-year degree, then I think it's certainly the path to take, because nowadays, it used to be a high school diploma could get you, a good job. And a lot of times now, there are jobs that require a bachelor's degree. Even if the skill set doesn't necessarily need a bachelor's degree, that's just now becoming a basic requirement. So it is becoming more important for students who feel that, they don't want to do the specific two-year degree, that the four-year degree is pretty important to attain.
Awesome. I actually had a question ready to go. Very specific, and I was very excited to ask it. And then I was like, oh, she's saying some really awesome stuff. We'll just, Andy, you edit that later. As far as options, there's a lot of online offerings. Mm-hmm. What are your experience with those? Do you talk with students who've gone through those? And what is their experience like?
Mm-hmm. Online degrees can be very helpful, especially if you are an older adult and you're looking to go back to get a degree or possibly a second degree. They're very helpful because it fits into your life a lot easier than actually going to a campus, something like that. But you have to be careful with online programs because they don't have the accountability always there. So you want to do your research, look for the ones that have a high completion rate, and know that if you're getting any financial aid that you're going to follow through with the program, because the biggest pitfall is to take out loans or something like that for a program that for whatever reason you're not able to quite finish. So you want to make sure that you're looking into the actual program and completion rates very carefully.
I have a friend who went to some sort of art institute and came out in not the best situation as far as student loan debt versus what she was really able to take away from it. What is some advice you can give to folks to avoid potential pitfalls like that? Because there are some programs out there that aren't as legitimate or aren't accredited the way they should be, or just aren't run the way that a lot of people assume college is going to be run and how they're going to be treated.
I mean, first, the major thing to look at is whether it's a for-profit or a nonprofit institution. And there are certainly for-profit institutions that are great and they do help their students. But you want to look at that because you want to make sure that you're going to get everything that you need and they're there to work for you and not just to make the money. So look at the accreditation. They do need to be accredited, their degrees. And the biggest flag to look for is if the credits that you would earn there don't transfer to other institutions. Because even if you finish a certificate or something there, if you want to use those credits to transfer to another degree, if an institution won't take them, then you've just lost all that money that you put into that certificate. So making sure that the credits are there and transferable, that's the major thing to look for. And if that's not the case, you probably want to avoid that program.
Awesome. Now, we can get to cost in a minute because obviously that's a big thing. It's in our culture and our news and things that's talked about a lot. But if a student is graduating high school and they just have no idea what they want to be when they grow up, so to speak, what is some advice you would offer how to approach their post-secondary journey?
I would say the first thing is to definitely have a post-secondary option, whatever it ends up being, as the goal. You want to make sure that whatever you're working towards, even if you're not sure what it is yet, that you really take the steps to make that as the goal. With the internet now, there are so many online assessments that are free that you can take, and even ones that aren't that great are still helpful a little bit. So I always encourage students to assess their own skills, assess their own interests. Go online, like mymajors.com, different areas. You can put in different survey information and they'll start giving you, here are some potential majors to think about, here are different potential careers that you might choose based on your own interest and your own skills. And that gets you really thinking about what the options are, and that really allows you to start figuring out, okay, well, should I go the 2-year route? Should I go the 4-year route? And if you end up in the 4-year route, you have flexibility, because even if you don't know exactly, if you go to a larger college with a lot of options, take a year, usually no more than 2 years. Explore those options, and then you'll get to a point where you'll know what that major is going to be. So it gives you the time to make those decisions, but you're still being productive with that time. You're still taking classes. You're still on your way to getting that degree completed, because you want to make sure that there's not a time gap. If you take the time off after high school, sometimes you might not be able to get right back into a college degree as quickly. So you always want to make sure to start in as soon as possible.
I will say, living on campus and going straight to college from high school, that strict schedule, kind of everything kind of held in place. I just remember thinking we used to start at 7:15. My first classes worked until 8. I was like, this is great. I actually get to sleep in. I realize now, if that's a schedule like that could be more difficult when if you've had some freedom on your own for a while and then you have to get back into it. Unless you're working regularly, which I hope somebody would be.
Oh yeah, the time management and everything that you learn by going through college and everything, those are all skills that are going to certainly help you, and it gets the momentum continuing. You don't lose that momentum, and there's always individual circumstances. Some students need to work to earn the money. That's certainly a case, but then that's still something very productive that you're doing in that time.
Now, as we mentioned, a big talk about college or post-secondary options is cost, and that the cost for most colleges and universities continues to increase. And I know my alma mater was maybe $14,000 a year when I started. By the time I was done, it was over 16. Now I believe it's in the low 20s or mid 20s, and it's only been years since I was there. How do you address that with folks? And is there ever a situation, or has anyone ever looked at an option where you've thought that might not be worth it with what you're going to have to endure later? Because I'm assuming, but I know very well what student loans are like when you're trying to pay them off for the rest of your life. In fact, I saw a cartoon where it was an old couple toasting each other with champagne, like a wedding anniversary, but it says, "We finally paid off our student loans." And I was like, that could be a lot of people I know. How do you deal with that, and what sort of advice do you give?
There is a huge cost-benefit analysis that has to happen when you're looking at college options. And there are so many factors that go into it. It's very overwhelming for a 17-year-old student who's looking at college. And that's where guidance counselors like me, that's where we can help, go through this. But you want to be looking at what are your future career goals, what's your earning potential down the road, and how much is it worth to invest in your education given on what you want to do. If you're wanting to do social work, that's not a very high-paying career, so you might want to look into your college options that, maybe a state university that's going to be less in tuition. You just want to make sure that you're making those wise choices about what your end goals are going to be. If you want to be a doctor one day and you plan on, earning a higher salary, then it might be worth it to invest more in the education. So there are some trade-offs you want to make there. But looking at recent statistics through like the National Labor Board and everything, over time, the average earnings of a college graduate do come out higher than a high school graduate, and you do end up paying off that investment that you make. There are, of course, exceptions to the rule. So, the student who, takes out $20,000 or more a year in loans just to afford their dream college, that might not be the wise investment to make. Community colleges now, traditionally where you would find 2-year degrees, they're now starting to offer some 4-year degrees. That is a great place to look. Now, the trade-off is going to be the amenities. A community college is not going to offer the recreation center, the residence halls, everything else that goes with a more traditional campus, but you still get an excellent degree. It gets you the credential that you need. So you want to be able to look at all these different options and decide what's going to be best for me, how am I best going to afford this to get to my ultimate career goal.
Awesome. Now, I remember when shopping and looking, obviously it has to be paid for, but with the help of student loans, price wasn't as much of an issue. It was more like, is it the right fit? And having good programs and some of the amenities you're talking about are obviously important, but do you see a difference nowadays? Are folks more price conscious with all of the things going up, or is it still student loans are going to help with this and we'll deal with it later, which is kind of how I was?
There's always the dream of college that I think everyone, and especially parents who want the best for their children, they want to go out there and get the best thing that they can possibly get. And so a lot of times you will get dazzled by a certain college, and it might be very expensive, and you might look at the bill and say, I have to go way into debt for this. But I think a lot of students are really getting savvy about it and saying, you know, I do intend to go to medical school one day, so I'm going to do the cheapest possible option for my bachelor's degree because I know I'm going to be investing heavily in a medical school degree. So it is becoming, you know, a situation where colleges are competing for students, knowing they have to give the best prices out there. So you'll see, you know, a lot of private institutions, high cost in tuition, giving significant discounts to students to compete with state schools. Even state schools now, I mean, they don't get the tax dollars that they used to get. So to make up all the money, they have to really compete for students, and same thing. So we're really in this time of so many changes happening in higher education. The budgets are switching around from, you know, state versus, you know, private and everything. So I think we're in the tipping point right now of now consumers. We are consumers looking at colleges. Everyone's being a little bit more savvy. Everyone's saying, what is the best option? What am I going to get the most money out of, you know, my investment? And the students that I work with, the bottom line looks at the price. And is it going to be worth it in the end for the degree?
Is that a question you generally ask everyone? Is the cost going to be worth it, or do you apply that to certain things and looking at, okay, you know, you can't sing, but you want to go be a music major. Is it going to be worth it to try to get into, you know, XYZ university? Or is it across the board? Do you ever have discussions with students and parents of like, have you considered, and I don't want to, you know, rock the boat or anything, but have you considered, is college worth it when it comes down to cost and time? Or is it always an assumed thing, let's try to manage the cost?
I'd say most of the students that I work with, it is pretty much an assumed you are going to college, and then it just becomes a matter of which, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I think fundamentally every student does have to make that decision, is college worth it? And from my opinion, I'd say for the vast majority of students it is, but the dream college that you're going heavily in debt might not be that right option. So it really depends on, again, that career goal you have down the road and what's the best option for you there. But some students, they're not cut out for a four-year degree. And you have to really make that honest assessment and say, am I going to be successful? Am I going to start something, take out on debt that I'm not going to be able to finish for whatever reason? And that's a time to think of maybe the vocational programs or different certification programs that really ends up meeting the goal that you need, but in a much less expensive option. So you're not putting yourself into debt for, you know, for no reason. So when you look at averages over time, yes, the degree usually is worth it. There are always going to be outliers and exceptions to the rule. And I know a lot of times in the media, these are the stories that, you know, make it onto the news. You know, the bachelor's degree holder who can't find a job.
Yeah.
you know, and you really feel for those students because they have put so much money into it. And those are usually going to be individual circumstances, you know, for that. But for the average student, it really does end up benefiting you in the end to have that credential, to have that four-year degree.
Fantabulous. I'm going to ask you a specific question that deals with my nephew because I think he's in a situation, and we've had discussions that I'm wondering what options are for him. He is at a four-year college right now, and he eventually wants to get into, or he's pursuing something that will move him towards video game development, which 10, 15 years ago were like, you can get a job in that, and now there are people who get paid to play and other people sit and watch. For me, that was called waiting for your turn, but now people pay to do this, so they get paid to do it. But you know, we were discussing, and I asked him to consider, you know, I think it's 18 or 19,000, and for the first year or two, it's a lot of the gen ed, it's a lot of the just, you know, English and history and things that he would be required to take most places he went. Is there freedom to move and to take advantage of maybe a community college or a state school that's going to have a lot less cost per year to build up those general education requirements and then pinpoint a place that has a really good program? Or does the transferring and the credits moving over cause issues for folks to do things like that?
Actually, transferring is on the rise quite a bit, and for the exact kind of reasons that you're talking about. Students know that they have to take a history class, an English class, these basic things you can take at a community college, you can take and at a much lower price before you then transfer over into a 4-year degree. And that is one of the kind of savvy options that students are starting to think about more and more. And that way, you can get the 4-year degree at a much lower price. You don't necessarily have the 4-year experience, that you would if you started at, a residential campus, something like that. But that's not always important, to every student. And the only tricky part that comes in is sometimes those specialty majors that you would end up in, you might have to take a class, during your freshman and sophomore year. That's just kind of logistics, things that can be worked out if you plan ahead, and work for it. So I would highly recommend a student who feels that they know exactly what they want to do, get those gen ed requirements out of the way at a community college if they're comfortable with that, and then transfer, find the program that fits them and go ahead and transfer. And especially in the state of Ohio, that they're making it a lot easier. There are transfer modules now. So within the state system, no matter what campus you go to, there are kind of set courses that are required to be transferred. So going into it, if you take this general education, core, whatever other state school I go to, it will transfer within the state of Ohio. So they're recognizing this is becoming more popular and making it easy for students to do it.
Awesome. Now you've made me think of something, which is, I don't want to say getting them out of the way, but knocking out some of those gen ed for free. Are there copious amounts of opportunities for high schoolers to tackle some of these post-secondary credits, or is that something that's still limited? I know it was kind of something discussed here and there when I was in school. I know other students who have taken advantage of college credits while they're still in high school. Is that something that's available for a lot of folks?
Pretty much any student, I'll speak specifically to the state of Ohio, a lot of students would have the post-secondary option available to them in high school. So you can take courses at a local community college. They are actual college courses that you'd be taking, and you get both high school and college credit for them, and that would be paid for by the state. So it's essentially free courses that you could take. So certainly students, particularly in junior and senior year in high school, can start taking some of these courses. In extreme cases, you could have almost a 2-year degree completed while you're in high school.
And that's not just for people who were like prodigy geniuses when they're 9.
No, I mean, there are some basic GPA requirements, but it's not anything that would, keep a lot of students out of it. You do have to be successful, just like any other student. You have to maintain, a C or better grade in your courses and everything. So it is available pretty much to everyone. In addition, there are AP courses. So AP courses that you would take in your high school, you could, based on your score on the exam, you could get college credit for those as well. So there are certainly students just through AP credit who get a full semester or almost a full year of credit going in to their degree because of all the different courses that they took in high school.
Well, I can speak to that. I took AP English, and we had a humanities program at my school, 2-year, which was very intensive and almost like a weeding out process. But I basically came in with 6 credit hours. So for the full 2 years, I was required to be at maybe 60% of really what was involved in that. And I also took advantage of I think I'm saying this right, a CLEP test.
Yeah.
I CLEP'd out of the college math that was required through, not from what I'd taken in school, but the knowledge I retained, was able to go in and say, hey, I can demonstrate this stuff. And they still made me take statistics, which I'm still mad about 15 years later. But
yeah, it's usually a helpful class, though.
I remember cat in boxes, and now that makes me just think of cat YouTube videos now. But statistically speaking, I didn't really like it. No, it's okay. The major way a lot of folks afford their post-secondary options is through student loans. And people have a lot of varying opinions on these, and feel free to riff on that if you'd like.
Sure. That is probably one of the major things you're seeing in the news right now, is the average debt of students is going up. How are they paying this for when they graduate? And it certainly is a major issue. It's one that I hope doesn't hold students back, but we have to educate students on what's the best way of doing this. So there are different sources of loans. There is the federal government, the federal student loans that students can take out, and there are private loans. The federal government does limit how much you can take out in loan each year, and that is to prevent huge amounts of debt, building up to get your degree. But that doesn't always cover the costs for students, and that's when they might turn to private loans. And so when you talk about the loan debt, it usually is these private loans that are being taken out, or parents are taking on loans to cover their students' tuition bills. And that's where the massive amounts of debt really end up coming from. So on the student side, the student loans that you can take out from the federal government, they're starting a lot of new great programs where based on your income after graduation, that can adjust your payment. So it helps you lower your student loan payment based on how much you're earning. It'll allow you to extend the time on how long you have to pay off those loans. So that is very helpful. And I think students need to be more aware of those student loans and how helpful that can be. The other side is the parent loans and the private loans. And that is when, like we talked about earlier, really coming down and making the decision, is it really going to be worth it in the end to take out this amount of debt for the degree you're going to get? There are certain colleges that are known for not giving much financial aid, but there are such name brand schools, people will do anything to go there. But are you going to really earn enough in the end to pay off all of that debt? Right. So again, it comes back to averages. The average student, yes, they'll be able to handle the loans, but the exceptions to the rule really make it, hits the news. It makes it seem like it's a huge problem. And it is a problem. We want to make sure that the students are getting the help they need. I mean, the government keeps cutting back the amount of grants available. We have a huge discussion that we probably won't get into about, as a society, are we investing in education in the right ways? But I think students need to see loans as a helpful tool. They just don't need to overuse them, and that's when the abuse really sets in.
And I think a little education pre-college would be helpful because just so someone can grasp on, this is what you'll be paying a month. This is what $200 or $500 a month looks like out of a typical income. And sometimes just to alleviate the sticker shock so they know what's coming. I had myself and a lot of friends, worst cases, who were just like, I have to pay what? And they wouldn't never take, they wouldn't never give back their experience. But I know that could be helped. Unfortunately, there's a whole lot more we could discuss, but we're out of time. But Liz, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
It was great, thank you.
Again. This has been Liz Baxter, an independent college counselor, and we'll have some information, or if you have any questions or need some guidance, I'm sure you can get a hold of her. I encourage you to do so. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are here with our next guest, and I'm very excited about the topic that he'll be presenting today, so I want to get right into it, make haste, start this discussion. I want to introduce to you guys Zach Nordyke, first time on Anderson Speaks, but not first time on Anderson Community Television.
Yep, that's true.
I was like a seasoned veteran.
Well, hopefully.
Awesome.
Hopefully.
Well, Zach, in case folks didn't see your first appearance, go ahead and just let us know about yourself. Let's do like a meet and greet here and your connections with the area and how you got to where you are now.
Absolutely. Kyle, it's a pleasure to be on. As you mentioned, I was on before. If anyone caught Barbara Baxter's special with me, I came on and I was really keying in on physical fitness, and that's something I'm really passionate about. I've worked with so many folks in the Anderson community. And I go physically to people's location, whether it's their home or work, and I provide exercise instruction. That was kind of what I presented before. But during that last show with Barbara, I mentioned that I have a gesture-based technology for mobile devices. So I really am excited to share that because I'm all about physical, whether it's, physical exercise or bringing something that I think is really interesting into the world from a technology standpoint that will allow people to be physical, but in a really neat, entertaining, and maybe productivity boosting way.
Now, you mentioned you have a passion to be an entrepreneur and that entrepreneur spirit. Where does that come from? When did it first grab you? And in general, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that sometimes you don't know that you're going to be an entrepreneur, but back in high school, I was learning for me always had to have some type of tangibility. It couldn't be so theoretical, I never liked the side of going to school that was like all these theories. I wanted to do things that had practical application. So when, you know, everyone was talking about entrepreneurship and, you know, theories about, oh, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, it's like I would like to get it and sell it and see if there's an interest for it. I wanted to bring certain ideas to life. There were products that I knew didn't exist that I wanted to create, and I wanted to share them with people. So it really started in high school. I think you get together with a group of friends and you say, wouldn't it be cool if? And everybody kind of stopped if, wouldn't it be cool if? And they never went for it. And it's like, I'm going to make that, you know, and I'm not only going to make it, but I'm going to share it with people.
And when you follow through after the ... with some action, a lot of cool things happen. And when you don't, I have a friend who had an idea for, he called it snowman in a I think he's snowman in a box or snowman in a hat. Okay. And it was basically, you know, he had studied for plastic molds of everything that could make a snowman.
Okay.
Just all you needed was snow.
Yep.
And like the hat screwed on the bottom, everything in it. And he never pursued that, thought it was a cool idea. And then like, I don't know, 5, 7 years later, he saw something almost identical in a store. And he's just like, oh no, like what did I miss? What could I have done? So action after the ... is very important. So tell us about your ... action.
You know, I think anyone who's ever been entrepreneurial and kind of pursued that after ... realizes it's very tough. And, you know, like the case you mentioned, so often you pursue it and you think, oh, everybody's going to love it. And it's like love at first sight. And they'll feel as passionate as you do. And you realize, boy, this is so hard. So, you know, specifically to MoveMax, I said, I'm not a technologist. You know, I'm a guy that's passionate. I'm an ideas person. I feel like I can be really inspirational to people that are technologists to bring my vision to life. So Northern Kentucky University has this very cool College of Informatics. I said, let me go down there because these students are studying kind of this natural interface technology, or a lot of them could be really passionate about it. This is new, this is emerging. It's in the artificial intelligence category. And for maybe folks that don't know what I mean, this is like robotics. Computers that hear what you're saying and understand the words that you're speaking. Computers that understand if I move my hand from here to here, it means I want to control something digital and move it from here to here. I thought, I certainly don't have the time and ability probably to figure out how to make all this code happen and all the technology parts to happen, but I guarantee someone at that school will, and I was absolutely right.
Awesome.
So that's where my journey with creating this gesture-based technology started. I went to the College of Informatics, and they actually have, and I have to give credit to NKU, they have a major emphasis on what I was always passionate about, bringing learning to life. So they actually have a dedicated team of students that go to NKU, and they're working on their computer science degrees or technology degrees, and they work for NKU, working on commercial projects that clients like myself bring to them.
Awesome.
So that's really where it started. They have a few professional project managers that work in the program. They said, Zach, you have to work with one of our students, Jason. And this was my original co-founder at MoveMax. So I told Jason the idea. He was like the only student there was like, this is totally possible. Everybody else was like, this is a major R&D risk, research and development risk. We don't know if we can bring it to life. And when Jason heard the idea, he was like, I think we can make a prototype of this really quick. So MoveMax is a gesture-based control system for mobile devices. That's like tablets and phones. But we could pretend like I have a mobile phone and I'll lean it against the cup. It can't be a flip phone, I'm sorry. It has to be like an iOS, like an iPhone or a nice Android product. We'll lean it against the cup. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the phone, that tiny little front-facing camera in the front of the phone. It reads your actions in a digital program. It can be a game, just for easy reference. Can literally be controlled. If I move my hand from here to here, there may be a little character on the screen, and it will go here to here. It is a touchless way of interfacing with the phone. And literally within weeks, Jason, the student at NKU, had created this rough prototype where you could control the digital whatever on the phone just by gesturing.
Awesome.
So.
Now when you first went to him, because you talked about a practical application.
Yes.
You thought, motion control, and what we were talking before the taping, and I want to get into that, how that has kind of had an explosion in gaming. But what was your practical application that you saw, and why mobile specifically?
You know, and that's a great question, because I kind of jumped ahead. probably back in 2011, maybe a shade before that, I was watching the TV and a news program came on featuring Xbox Connect. For those unfamiliar, Xbox Connect is a gaming system literally ingrained in home entertainment. So the Xbox is a game console and the Kinect is a set of cameras that has this really elite sensor system, and it knows everywhere you are in the room, and it is amazing for gesture controls.
Which is, if anyone's freaking out right now, that's, for our purposes, that's a good thing. that it knows right where you are. I can understand some people raising red flags, but this is all, nothing nefarious here. We're all good.
Yes, exactly. It's really cool. It has a lot of entertainment purpose, the way Microsoft and Xbox have framed it. But I thought, wow, this technology is amazing. You can physically interact with digital content. It's like you are living in the real world, but you're kind of moving around these digital landscapes, and you can control things digitally.
People who are familiar with Nintendo Wii, there's a
Yes.
nunchuck controller, and it uses, I believe, IR
Yep.
to move within space.
Yes.
But the advancement with the Kinect and also with the PS4 cameras
Yep.
is that they're using multiple cameras and they're creating a 3D space that not only can track just your body movements without a controller,
Right.
but also what it puts up on the screen can be things that interact with what's in your room, with your
Exactly.
movement. My kids love, on my PS4, they can
Yep.
flick these little robots around and do things. So, I mean,
That's fun.
this is some in-depth interactive stuff. And you saw that and you thought what?
I saw that and I thought, it's amazing in our living rooms, but we're more and more not in our living rooms.
Absolutely.
We're more moving towards this mobile, I need to have everything in my pocket, in my hands. If I'm in a hotel and I'm traveling, I want this experience. And I thought, why relegate people to a single geography? Why not take it out of the box? There's 500 million smart handsets in the US alone. That's tablets and phones. Why on earth are we limiting people just to their living room? Can't we break this literally out of the box and take it anywhere? So my aha was like, this is awesome, but it would be so much cooler if we didn't have to do it just in our house, if it could be brought wherever we go. So
Were you thinking just from a gaming / entertainment standpoint?
Yep.
Or were you thinking UI interface, or you mentioned productivity we were talking earlier?
yeah, I really thought the gaming aspect of it was cool, but I really felt like there was a lot of things that could enhance our productivity. I don't like solely working sitting down. Sometimes I have to if I'm in deep thought, which I sometimes get intense and I have to sit down. But when I stand up, I like to do things free-flowing, and like standing up and typing is a little unnatural to me. I thought it would be so cool if I could, gesture open up things, gesture call things like Siri and the other abilities on mobile devices to speak and have the dictation, the typing. I thought there was so much that could be done in terms of productivity. Also in the car, it seems like it doesn't save a lot, but even that little, if you have the phone riding up on one of the dashboard pieces, just to like reach out and type. I thought you could keep your eyes completely on the road, do hand signals, call up the voice activation, etc. So I thought the gaming is very cool, but there are so many productivity pieces that just aren't inherent to gaming systems that would be very inherent on mobile devices with all the applications that already exist that really make that their core focus, just adding this gesture functionality.
Something I think of, some practical applications, even in industrial applications, are being able to use a high-end tablet or phone, not needing some huge system, to be able to have basically robotic repetition or mimicry of a human's movement when possibly moving freight or
Yes.
moving things through a warehouse. I just read an article today about Amazon.
Yes.
And supposedly the Fire Phone, what a huge disappointment it was.
Yep.
But one of the things that Bezos really pushed for was that facial recognition that allowed them to give that kind of 3D tweak. And you put that together with things they do where they're already using, I think, drones and robots in their stuff. Not that we want to replace humans, but the application that something like this could be in a situation like that is to be
Yes.
able to move a lot of things, have that human element, but be able to do things that human wouldn't be able to do on their own in a much freer, easier setup.
Kyle, I think you're totally on, and I think Amazon and also I think at SpaceX and Tesla, and I know some people
That's a whole nother show. We'll come back
I
and talk about
understand.
Musk. I love that stuff.
You know, but I think one cool thing, without getting into heavy detail on that, is the way now for designers, again, in more of an industrial setting, SpaceX designs these massive spaceships. And instead of thinking from an engineering standpoint, what will I need to do to the computer to get this piece here? It's like, can't we reach out, grab that digital part and just put it in with our hands as if we were building that product tangibly right here? You know, I just feel like, yes, it may be not as sophisticated as a computer with 100, 3D depth sensors, but on your mobile device, what if you could physically grab things, set them, manipulate it just as we would manipulate things that were in physical existence?
Physically place emails and organize files and rearrange stuff. I like that.
And I don't know how many people have seen Minority Report, and this might be shooting over the top of everyone's head. But like, if anyone ever YouTubes the movie, I guarantee there's going to be a clip of where, one of the characters in the film is like physically grabbing like what would look like the window of a computer and moving it. And, you have different applications open, and you can take one and put it here and put it there. Really, that kind of bringing the sci-fi down to a in-your-pocket experience, that's totally what we were striving for as we were creating this. And we went through a ton of speed bumps. But what kept us inspired is we kept thinking about, gosh, this could be such a unique new way of people interacting with their phone. Because I remember I had a BlackBerry probably like in 2004. And I used it from 2004 to maybe like 2009, and then the iPhone came out. I was like, who wants to touch a phone? Who would want the touchless keypad? That seems clunky. Now it's like, if I could ditch the whole keypad and just gesture and speak to my phone like I was a person, now we're talking. So like, I've gotten over my need to touch it. Now it's like, okay, touch the phone. Now it's like, don't touch the phone, just speak to the phone and gesture to the phone. So, it's like these really cool revolutions, these new ways of interacting with computing devices almost like they were people, or being able to manipulate digital environments like real environments.
I see a unique dynamic with this because I look at a lot of advancements we've had come from, I don't want to say practical versus entertainment, but come from NASA developed something for this, and now we have Velcro. Or the military industrial complex was working on this, and now that's been able to translate into civilian use. What I see here is a lot of this technology is the support, and I guess the petri dish, so to speak, is one of almost like purely entertainment. And that's what hooks people in, and then it starts to move. I mean, I may be just speaking out of turn here, but I know some 3D printers and things. Those things are advancing prosthetics, and in some areas just doing some amazing things for people. But from what I've read and what I've seen, that wasn't the intention. It was more like, hey, let's build some figurines, let's have some fun. Now we're printing 3D weapons. Now we're printing 3D limbs. It's just it's an odd turn.
And I think just on the 3D printing end for just a moment, when MakerBot, and again, I know that may be a reference that some people aren't familiar with, but it's a home 3D printer. It was one of the first ones that gained major commercial appeal. That was actually open source, and anybody could kind of hack and build on to this basic framework. We are releasing not a totally open source version of MoveMax, but it's going to be available via Unity 3D, which is a game creation platform, as a plugin. And we're going to let people hack on it. Our intention, we might think, well, it would be great for games, and it would be great for productivity. Somebody may take it and like, I don't want to do any of that, and come up with something we're completely ignorant or oblivious to, like you said, and just transform it. Maybe they have a biomedical application for it, or something we are just not even aware of it could be used in. So, like you said, it's amazing when you put out something in the world of GitHub and open source, and where other smart people can take the base that you've laid and kind of hack upon it and code upon it. So yeah, I mean, something revolutionary could emerge that we weren't even really intending it to be used for.
Let me ask this question so I can ask another one. Do you see, because I went to the website and we've been discussing, and gaming has been a focus. Do you see that as the foot in the door, the practical application now? And if so, Where are you with it right now? What are you able to do with it?
So right now, yes, is the answer. We do think gaming is the easiest foot in the door because we felt like if we attempt to put this on an operating system, if it's like, an Android operating system component or an iOS operating system component, it's probably not sophisticated enough. It's too raw. There's still too many things that are imperfect about it for every person to appreciate. But we felt like game developers had this particular open-mindedness, so to speak, to things that were not perfect and would co-contribute with us to the perfection of MoveMax. So right now, we're waiting on making a few more tweaks. We've submitted the technology, the gesture technology, to Unity, and it's in the process of being approved. It should hopefully happen by the end of this week. What you can do right now is it captures leaning really well in jumping. So what we have is basically the ability, when you turn it on, the camera system immediately puts a block kind of where your head needs to be lined up, and then also it asks you to lean to one side and lean to the other. So it basically makes this virtual grid. It recognizes where your head's at. It recognizes, how far you need to lean one way, how far you can lean the other way, and it builds this grid around you. So right now, what you can do is, and I'm sure maybe some people are familiar with the game Subway Surfers. It's just this fun little game you can manipulate with your hand and switch lane to lane. You can control one of these simplistic games simply by leaning one way, leaning the other, and jumping. So you can, it's almost like when Atari created Pong, just something super easy. But it's the first step. You don't need
start somewhere. Right?
Yeah, you don't need any additional hardware. You don't need a big infrared sensor for this. Literally, you can download the game like any other app, and boom, you've got gesture recognition on your phone.
Awesome.
So that's where we're at right this moment.
So do you consider this, because we've talked about some huge applications, and obviously to be able to do some of the things would require incredible intricacies, and it's very sensitive things. Do you consider this, as much progress as you made, still in its infancy, or is this something that, do you consider it there?
Yeah, I think that gesture is a part of like this bigger natural interface wave. So like natural interface means to me, you interact with a computer in a very similar manner to how you would interact with a human being. It can include gesturing. It can include natural speech recognition. It can include not only speech recognition, but dictation. And there's also computer vision where the sensors can identify that's the American flag and give you background on it. What we're doing, I think, needs to be, and it's almost like bringing this contextual application. It needs to be integrated where all those parts work harmonious. So I think we just have nicked the tip of the iceberg because it seems like people are always being asked to upgrade their device or buy one more piece of hardware. What we think is like, halt, let's introduce people to this just on the $700 device they already have and get them interested. And when they have that interest and they build like, wow, this is so cool. Imagine if, when they start to say, imagine if we've got them hooked and we can roll out version 2, version 3,
so when they get to that, what if ... you guys are in a position to take the action.
Yes, because we've already introduced it. We didn't make a high barrier to entry. Hey, potential user, hey, $99 will get you this. It's like, hey, download this. Note, it's rough, but it will give you like this sense of freedom in this sense of touchless interface with your phone you have never seen before. And if you like it and we can do some really fun things with that, imagine when we're able to do a version 2 that takes into consideration some of the things that weren't so great about version 1 and you're able to step back 5 feet and open up Evernote and then close it with your hand and call Siri and do all this other very cool stuff. So we believe, innovation is just kind of stacking up blocks, and we're literally just putting the first block down.
Well, what impresses me is that you guys aren't reinventing the wheel. You're not sitting here going, how can we come up with some sort of device that can do this? Like you said, it becomes a peripheral, becomes an additional expenditure for folks.
Yeah.
You're taking the incredible technology that's already there and learning to start using it, and basically. Without the funny looking ping pong balls and Peter Jackson screaming at you from the side for motivation, you're basically doing some motion capture in a way, but that like you said earlier, you're building this grid, and I'm just thinking of a lot of the ideas that I've thought about are fun things, but it's still that's what brings people in. But I know now where some of these camera phones or other devices are able to tell whether you're happy or sad, whether you're still reading or whether you've walked away. I mean, it's amazing what's there, and you guys are just saying we're just gonna build on that and see what we can do, which I like that.
Yeah, I think that you always have to put something out there. You know, it's easy, and I think this is why people get stifled. And I know we were talking about the example earlier of your friend that came up with the product idea. It's so easy to get paranoid. People are going to hate this. It's too early. It won't be accepted. It's like we're just going to put it out there. We realize there's always a risk of rejection, but we think when you come with passion and when you come with the open-mindedness, it isn't perfect, and we're going to respond to people's wants in a reasonable way, that's the way to gain traction. Also, we're not going to be opposed to, hey, can I take kind of what you've done and put my own, code on top of it and this twist on top of it? I think if we're open-minded, it will open the door for other kind of co-pioneering ideas, and everything will integrate where it becomes like the guy who created Zynga, Mark Pincus, always says creating a web treasure, something you can't remember your life without and you couldn't live without moving forward. It's like you don't remember when there wasn't an internet, or some people can't remember when there wasn't an internet in this like super interconnected digital realm. It's like if we lost it all tomorrow, a lot of people, maybe not everyone, would feel like very devoid of something that they found incredibly integral to their life. And we're hoping to make that next little treasure that people can't even remember back when they had to touch their phone or couldn't speak to it and get it to do all this stuff. So we really want to advance to where like Minority Report isn't about the future, it's about the present.
Awesome. And there's a thought, this connection I'm making, speaking about being an entrepreneur, I'm thinking about the Shark Tank.
Yes.
And one thing you see someone who's brought in a product, and obviously they're passionate about it, because you usually don't invest that much time and money into something you're not passionate about. But there's this weird, use the word dynamic again, there's this weird dynamic that the people who are successful have, is that they're passionate, they put themselves into it, but they're willing to part with it in a way. In the sense that it becomes like a seed. And they can go on a show like that and be like, yeah, I'll give you control over this thing that's been my baby, because they understand this could lead to other things. And I think you hit on that. This is an awesome idea you guys have. You're putting it out there, though, so people can work together. And this may lead to something that becomes, you might get to sell off the next PayPal. You might get to go start your own SpaceX and build Tesla cars. And that's the opportunities, and working with folks, and like you said, improving lives and getting something that's integrated is an awesome place to be.
I agree. And I mean, you touched on certain entrepreneurs realize that you can only control so much. And if you're going to make a large product, almost all the time, you're going to have to bootstrap it first. And bootstrap means put your own money in, put your own time in. No one's really going to write you that first big check until you put blood, sweat, and tears into it. And, myself, I know I mentioned Jason as a co-founder. I also, and I can't leave these guys out, Brandon and Michael are my current code team. Thank you, guys. They really took the torch from Jason, who left the company, and brought it further. But when my current co-founders, Brandon and Michael, came on board, one of our first things is Microsoft Ventures actually approached us and wanted us to come out to Redmond, Washington.
Awesome.
We had to make the choice to go to Chicago within 48 hours of getting this notice and pitch. And we knew if this becomes successful, we're going to lose a ton of control. And we're taking a risk. We're going to go to Chicago with kind of like the product in a halfway awesome, halfway clunky format and show it to these big Microsoft venture capitalists and all these people in Chicago we've never met, and they could tear us apart. But we knew if we didn't take that risk, if we weren't willing to lose some control, it wouldn't affect people's lives in a meaningful way that we had, that we envisioned it. And they really embraced that with me, and we went for it. We unfortunately didn't get in, but as you become, I guess, more knowledgeable about how entrepreneurship and innovation works, you begin to realize it is really not about you controlling every facet of the idea. It has to make an impact on people's lives in a major way, and as long as you have some shred of control of the idea or some percentage of the business, you're going to be taken care of. But if you don't make people's lives more enriched, you're never going to benefit at all. So
awesome. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and there's other questions here I'd love to get to. We need to have you back, discuss this, and you can update us.
Yeah.
But it's MoveMax. What's the website?
MoveMax, MoveMX.com. Again, MoveMX.com. You can learn a lot more. We're going to update the page just because this Unity plugin is just about to become available. And there's a lot of new breakthroughs that I'm excited to share.
Awesome. Well, Zach, thanks for coming on the show.
Sure, Kyle. Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm looking forward to you coming back. I'm looking forward to next month's episode. Until then, take care of yourselves. I'll see you later.